My name's Erek Slater. I'm a bus driver in Chicago for about 10 years. I've been elected by my coworkers to be their union steward and also an executive board member for the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 241. I had been illegally fired by the Chicago Transit Authority, but they had been forced to bring me back to work. However, they hadn't complied with the order yet, so we decided to accept an invitation from the transit workers in Korea and Japan to go participate in their international solidarity events. For perhaps 10 years, the transit workers in Japan, called Doro-Chiba, is their union, they had been consciously trying to build international solidarity with transit and other workers in Korea. And every year they had rallies and demonstrations. Every year they had study sessions, both in Seoul, Korea, and in Tokyo, Japan. And workers would go back and forth to learn from each other. This has been going on for about 10 years. So I came in, was invited to participate as part of an international delegation. Myself and several other people from the United States came, a few from Europe. And this was this attempt to see each other's struggles and learn from them and actually give practical solidarity. This year, a lot more was going on, especially in Korea. There was mass mobilizations, mass demonstrations going on. At the same time, as it turned out, when this yearly solidarity rallies were going on. So on the same weekend, we were planning on anyway going to Korea. There was a mobilization and we thought it was going to be 1 million people. Sure enough, it was 1 million people in the streets of Seoul, Korea. And this is in a country with only 50 million people of a total population. In addition to the learning from each other and the practical work of going back and forth to each other's countries, we also had mass rallies and demonstrations. So in Tokyo, in Japan, we had about 5,800 workers and community members participated in this rally. I was very impressed at the organization that the Japanese were able to put forward this rally, really with opposition to it. The government put out plainclothes representatives to harass and intimidate us. No big deal. We just kept on going. They had a few counter-demonstrators who had bullhorns. No big deal. We continued. We had 6,000 people. They had 5, right? And we went downtown Tokyo and had a very impressive mobilization as they have done for many years in the past. But I learned a lot from watching that, how organized they were and the tactics they used. We were able to interview some of the leaders of Doro-Chiba actually in the hotel owned by the union and staffed by fired workers who had been participated in strikes and other actions.
それでなぜこういう取り組みを始めるようになったかというと、一言で言うと国鉄分割民営化という敵の攻撃の結果、こういう領域に、踏み出すということを決断せざるを得なかったんですよね。でこれはアメリカの労働運動とも深く関係している問題で、日本で新自由主義という攻撃が導入される時というのはアメリカではレーガンが航空管制官の労働組合に、パトコですよね、激しい攻撃を加えて解体した時、日本では同じことが国鉄労働運動の解体という形で、中曽根という首相によって行われて、もうさらに言えばイギリスではサッチャーが、炭鉱労働に対して激しい攻撃を加える、つまりこういう形で民営化という攻撃が労組破壊攻撃として、貫徹されたんですね。特に私が思うのは日本は 世界のどの国よりも民営化による労組破壊攻撃が徹底的に貫徹された国だったんですね、私たちの職場で言っても当時40万人いた国鉄の労働者が民営化された時には20万人、やっぱり半分職場を追われて、その解雇という形ではなかったけれども事実上の解雇になっている、これだけ激しい攻撃が吹き荒れたんです。この現実を見て国鉄の労働者だけではなくて日本の労働組合全体が震え上がったんですよね。
So after Japan in Tokyo, in Chiba province, about 200 of us, again mostly Japanese, but also Americans and some Europeans, we traveled, we flew to Seoul, Korea. The class war in Korea is open and raw. When we were there, several industries were on strike. The transit workers that were building this direct connections, international solidarity with the transit workers in Japan and with Doro-Chiba, they were on strike in the Seoul region. The transit workers of Seoul had been on strike for almost 2 months when they invited us to their mass membership meeting. Here, about 400 workers sing a song in memory of their fallen comrades who helped overturn the dictatorship. It was about 47 days, I think, when we were there. They had been on strike. The strike lasted for 74 days. And they were fighting against attacks on the labor law. They were fighting against the national two-tier system of irregular work, among many other things. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, KCTU, has been helping to lead the struggle. I had learned about them in Chicago when they had sent solidarity messages to help me win my job back. We were able to briefly interview the former General Secretary of the KCTU Seoul region. I had met him previously during the April 1st, 2016 Day of Action led by the Chicago Teachers Union. But our sister local 308, has rail conductors and rail operators. Okay. Yeah, you came to Chicago, that's right. Yeah.
Our Korean workers stand in solidarity to the end.
Before the million-person march on Saturday, we participated in a rally of tens of thousands of workers led by the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. It was an interactive program of speeches, musical, comedic, and dance performances. The demonstration was huge. Significant numbers of high school and college students participated in remarkably disciplined sections of the march. The government used police buses parked tightly front to end to surround the palace and presidential Blue House as a barricade to the marchers taking over the buildings. There were very few arrests and very little violence reported. So there's a long history of the exploitation and domination of the Japanese government over the peoples of Korea. And so this delegation of 200 Japanese, Americans, and Europeans had to be very careful and cautious and had to make a point that that's not what we're part of. One of the most important things that I felt the delegation did went to the Japanese embassy. In front of the Japanese embassy is a statue which commemorates or memorializes the history of the Japanese government, the Japanese military, its mass rape of Korean women called comfort women. On our way to the embassy, the Korean police stopped us and tried to stop us from actually going to the statue of the Korean comfort women. Briefly, some discussion happened and they allowed us to go through. There was surveillance of it throughout it. police cameras and so on, intimidation, etc. But this was an important moment that we were able to do this. We got a speech from a student leader that was part of the encampment that was trying to stop, and to this day has been able to stop, the removal of this statue of Korean comfort women, which both the governments of Japan and Korea are trying to remove. So the student occupation was able to stop it. They were able to speak to us as the Japanese delegation. I think this was an important historical moment. After we left Korea, every week there was bigger and bigger protests. We had 1 million the Saturday we were there. It was 1.7 million, we were told, the week after. And they kept on building and building. And this is in a country with only about 50 million people. There was 1.7, almost 2 million people. And so much pressure built that these protest movements were able to force the government to have formal impeachment procedures against the president of the country. And she was in fact removed from power a few weeks after these mass mobilizations. And this was a huge victory for the protest movements, for the leadership of these organizations that built this for a long period of time. These workers and students that did this was a huge victory. After we had these international solidarity actions in Japan, about 200 of us went to Korea, to Seoul, Korea. And it was mostly Japanese. It was a few Americans and a few Europeans. Immediately, we were thrust into a mass mobilization of 1 million people on Saturday. That morning, we had discussions and meetings among the organizers of the marches, and we made presents and gifts and wrote statements of solidarity, which we later gave to workers. And one of the more poignant moments, and more emotional moments to me, was when about 25 transit workers from mostly Japan and Europe and the United States went to the union offices of the Korean transit workers, the rail workers. And we presented these gifts back and forth. We gave speeches of solidarity back and forth between the two unions. When we returned to Chicago, transit workers, we had began to have several public actions as part of a campaign to fight for respect and dignity on the job and also for a good contract. I hope that we learn from the workers, especially the transit workers in East Asia. I hope that we begin to build the international solidarity that they have shown us from Korea to Japan.